everyone, and welcome back to my channel. Today we are talking all about connecting with, clearing, and charging your new decks. So this can be tarot, oracle, any type of deck you have. This can even be practices that you institute with new runes, any sort of a divinatory tool that you like to use. These are practices that you can implement into how you connect with, clear, and charge those new tools that you bring into your practice. I'm going to share with you ways that I clear with, connect, and charge my new decks, but I'm also going to share other practices with you that I've heard of that I don't use in my personal practice, but I want to give you other ideas because maybe there are things that resonate with you that you want to include in how you connect with your decks. So if you're interested in learning how to connect with your deck or getting some new ideas, keep watching and let's get into it. So I'm going to first start by talking about the things that I do. So when it comes to a new deck in my practice, the first thing I always do is I smudge that deck. I want to clear the energy and just get it ready to go. I will always smudge a deck before I read it for the first time. And I always like to do this with white sage. So you can use whatever you like to smudge with, but I always start with white sage because it's the most clearing and purifying, and then maybe I'll burn some palo santo, some cedar, whatever it is that you like to burn, you can totally do that. And if you don't like white sage, you don't have to use it. I'm just saying that's what I always like to start with. So what I'll usually do is, let me show you here. I have some white sage right here. I will usually run the sage over my hands as well, and then I will grab my new deck and run the sage all around it. So underneath, the sides, all around. And another thing that I like to do is I'll put my sage back in the shell or wherever you keep your sage, and I will just sort of fan out the cards, open it up, and let that sage smoke run through as much of the cards as possible. I will even sometimes shuffle the cards overhead. Also, just be careful if you're burning smudge. I know that's silly to say, but please don't start a fire. I will say some sort of a little prayer as I'm smudging the deck. It's honestly depends deck by deck. I change it. It's just sort of an intuitive thing that I'll say, but something about clearing the deck of any previous energies it may hold, filling it with love, light, good intentions, and whatever else I want to imbue the deck with energetically, whether that be wisdom, whether it be, that the messages that come forth are always in perfect alignment and timing with the path and purpose of the seeker, whomever it be, myself or someone else I'm reading for. There's many different ways you can take this, and there's many different types of things you can say to just sort of put forth a good energy into your deck. But it can be very simple. It doesn't need to be wordy. It doesn't need to be some extravagant prayer or anything like that. Whatever you feel called to say. Like I said, most of the time it is different, and there's, loosely a few things I follow, but overall I just allow my intuition to guide me on whatever I feel makes the most sense for that deck. Because also different types of decks with different types of artwork and energy, you maybe feel called to call in or focus on different types of readings or energies when you're setting the intention for that deck. So just something to keep in mind. But smudge is the first thing I always start with. The other thing that I sometimes do, I don't always do this, but I will sometimes charge a new deck with a crystal. So very simple practice. You would just take a crystal and place it on top of the deck like this. It doesn't need to be in contact with the physical deck. If the deck has like a big box it comes in, like those big Llewellyn boxes or something, and you just want to set the crystal on top of the box, that's perfectly acceptable in my opinion. If you want it to be in contact with the physical deck, you can always just pull it out and do this. And sometimes I feel called to have certain crystals actually just sort of live with a particular deck. So it may be something I have sitting on top of the deck if it's in a big box. If they're smaller crystals, sometimes I'll put them in, whether it be the bag or box that they live in, I will put the crystals in there just because I feel like those energies resonate well with the energy of that deck, and I want to keep it close to that deck. So not something I always do, but for certain select decks I do this. Some different kinds of crystals you can use. Very common one that I use is selenite. This is a window pane selenite. You've probably seen this if you watched any of my videos, really. This one is a big part of my practice. I love selenite, and this piece in particular is part of my tarot reading setup. as well as my smoky quartz, which is this piece right here. Other kinds of crystals you can use, so that's selenite was the first one I mentioned, and that is just pure white light, really high vibrational energy. Smoky quartz is a transmuter of negative energy, as well as a very protective and grounding energy. Some other options I pulled out here, things that I don't necessarily use but could be good options. I have rose quartz here just for love, universal love, unconditional love for self and others, that sort of energy. Clear quartz, this is a big piece of clear quartz, but it is the master magnifier and has a super high vibration, amplifies energy, so that's another one. Here I have shungite. It's a little sphere. I have a sphere stand for it. You could put a sphere on its stand on top of your deck like this. Shungite is very purifying, protective, grounding energy. This is actually even used in water filtration, so it is very purifying. Another good option. I think I have used this for charging decks before, actually, now that I'm thinking about it. I have some jet here, another very protective and grounding stone. In my culture, this is heavily believed to be a protective stone, and many people will wear it, usually in a small little cut and faceted piece. Jet is very interesting because it's very lightweight. It looks like it would be a heavy stone, but it's actually like very light because it's a lot of charcoal or carbon, I can't remember right now, but it's similar to petrified wood, but with a lot more charcoal and carbon going on. So another very protective, grounding energy. So you could definitely charge your new deck with something like jet. Garnet is super grounding, that could be a good option as well. And then here is carnelian. The reason I put this here is because this has actually been living on top of one of my decks, and I would have never thought to charge a deck with carnelian. It is very invigorating, very energizing, and it's very creative. It helps facilitate a creative space. So maybe not the first thing you would think about to charge a new deck with, but kind of a cool option. So that is carnelian. And then the other thing I have here is salt. I always have this particular piece of salt on the table when I do a reading, so I will use that as well. Salt is very purifying, another great option to clear your deck. Really quick, I didn't think to include this crystal here, but as I was sitting here thinking about it, I thought I should share this. This here is apophyllite. This could be another good option to charge your new decks with. Because it is an ascension stone, it's a stone of connecting to spirit. And this is something else I wanted to mention. I don't know how I didn't think about that when I was grabbing other crystal options. A stone that is, an upper chakra stone could be a great option for connecting to spirit and that spiritual energy. So something like apophyllite, even amethyst or Veracruz amethyst, scolasite, those types of stones could be good options. And honestly, like I said, upper chakras, third eye chakra and throat chakra stones could be great options to charge your deck with. Like I said, I don't do a ton of charging of my deck, so maybe that's why I didn't think about this right away, but stones like azurite is a very popular, well-known third eye chakra stone. That is a great stone to place on your deck because that is a stone of heightened intuition. That's perfect. That's a great energy you want to imbue a deck with. So an intuitive stone like this, any sort of third eye chakra stone, lapis lazuli or labradorite, those types of stones would be fantastic options. Even throat chakra stones are fantastic because the throat chakra is the chakra of speaking your truth and of good communication. So this here, for example, is blue lace agate. It's very calming and good communication, and this would be a fantastic option to charge your deck with. So something like this, amazonite would be a fantastic one. That's another great throat chakra stone. So things like that are other options to think about that I completely missed when I was grabbing these other crystals that I thought I should definitely mention. So I just wanted to mention those really quick as well. And as far as connecting with your deck, my practices for connecting with my deck are very simple. I just like to take the time to sit and look through the cards, admire the artwork, connect with the energy, notice what's different about it, try to really connect with the meanings and interpretations, whether it be a very traditional deck like this or a newer take with some artistic changes in the interpretations where you kind of try to sit and analyze where you can find that core meaning and how they've chosen to interpret it differently. all of those things, you're sitting and you're just gazing at the deck, admiring it, holding it in your hands. That's a very simple way to connect, and that's honestly the easiest way. It's what I always do. I don't like to complicate this part of the process because I feel like it's easy to complicate it, and really it is just a very simple connection of energy, and taking the time to hold it in your hands and look through it is a very powerful practice in my opinion. No need to complicate it beyond that, at least for me. So that's what I usually do. I used to have all of my decks in the drawers of my nightstand, so they were close to me when I slept. But my deck collection grew and no longer fit there, so I had to kind of move some things around in my space, so they are unfortunately no longer in my nightstand. I always felt like that was kind of cool that they were so close to me when I was sleeping. Now I have them in a different place, so I don't do that anymore, but if you want to try to do something similar to that, you can always just, if it's one deck, and this is something that I haven't done, but I probably should try doing, is just putting the one deck on your nightstand. As for other practices, since we're on this topic, something that is very common that I hear about a lot is a lot of people will sleep with a new tarot deck in their pillowcase. I've never done this, and I don't have anything against it. It doesn't resonate with me. It is another practice a lot of people do, and I can see why people do it and how it works, so I just wanted to put it in here and include it as something you can do if you feel called or pulled to do it. It is a very common practice I have heard of, at least. Another way that I like to connect with my decks is just through a simple reading, a simple pull. The first time I'll read with a deck that's brand new, it usually won't be too big of a reading. I try to keep it simple, maybe a 3-card pull sort of thing. I don't know that I've always followed this. Maybe sometimes I've used it for a big reading, but I usually have, I'm trying to think if I've ever had a deck that I didn't do the very first reading for that deck for myself. I don't know that I have. If I have, I'm not thinking of it right now. Almost all of my decks, if not all of my decks, I have always done the first reading for that deck, with that deck for myself. I just feel like that's kind of a good way to connect with the deck in just a simple reading, and it could just be a general energy type of reading. This is something that I like to do, so that's a way that I connect with the deck. Other ways people will connect with their decks or clear with their decks beyond just the pillowcase option. I do hear about people submerging their deck in salt. I have never done this. I just have my little salt crystal here, but I know people will submerge their decks in salt or set their decks on large charging plates like this. This is not something that I typically do. I'm not saying I've never done it, but it's not very common for me to do this. But it's a very cool idea to keep your deck charging on a charging plate. So this is a selenite charging plate. The rainbow here is because there's an aura treatment on this selenite in particular. And the other thing that I have never tried doing, but I know a lot of people like to do this when they first get a deck, is they interview the deck. So rather than where I just like to do a simple, maybe 3-card pull, general energy type of reading for myself with the deck to help me get acquainted with it, some people will sort of interview the deck, where they ask certain questions and pull a card to understand that deck, the kind of readings they want to use it for. There is an energy there in that deck, and the more we connect with it, the more we can understand it better. So that's really the point of all of these different practices that I'm sharing with you today, is to connect with that energy, understand it better, and of course clear it at the beginning so that you're starting with a fresh slate. So I hope you found these practices that I've shared with you today to be helpful. If you have any questions at all, as always, feel free to post those in the comments section below. And if you're interested in tarot and spirituality, I would love it if you'd subscribe to my channel. Those are the types of things I post about, and I would love to have you join along. So thank you guys so much for watching, and until next time, take care and be well. Bye.